my eyes. My computer needs to charge. It's only at 32%. And I just unplugged it this morning. Okay, at least it's not dead. Da, 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 da. Okay, messages. So I can read everything. Also, I don't know how I feel about the bandana look, but I think with my curly hair, like, oh my goodness, look at that curly wavy hair. It looks nice. I have to lean out back a little bit because I can't see the political compass test. I think I might have done something like this before. I don't know. Take the test. Ignore the ants. Okay, so I'm taking the political compass test, and just like disagree, strongly disagree, agree, etc. And I figured it would be fun for me just to do it, and also talk you out the road as to why, because I feel like a lot of people are unable to articulate their why. And it's like if there's something that I need to know more about, I'm also going to fully admit to it. So, sorry, it's like my hair is not even on my head. Give me 1 second. I can see it poking out. Hi. So, the first question of the political compass is if. Hi, thank you for doing the stuff. Okay. If economic globalization is inevitable, it should primarily serve humanity rather than the interests of transnational corporations. I actually agree. And that's what everything should be focusing about, like humanity as a whole. But it also, like, I'm going with strongly agree, but I think there is point of nuance with it, where there are some nations that have such different morals that it's incompatible if it's just economic globalization, if that makes sense. So you got to be really, really careful with that. I'd always support my country, whether it was right or wrong. Disagree. Here's the thing. I'm very much patriotic. I firmly believe that the United States is really lucky to be what it is. It's not free from criticism. There's a lot of things to criticize about it. But the fact that, like, we have people who can say they hate it, but still live here and not get shot, that's pretty dang good. We have people who are able to choose their own path, to choose to make life better for themselves. And that's pretty dang good. Now, there are some things to criticize. I'm not denying that. But that's kind of where I stand. No one chooses their country at birth, so it's foolish to be proud of it. I wish there was a neutral option, because it depends. Like, I can't think of any in particular, but there are those that is very much like they have very inhumane practices, and some people need to do better. So I'm gonna go with agree, because like you got those, but I don't strongly agree because I was born in the USA, and while there's a lot of things to be better about it, it's a pretty dang good country. Our race has many superior qualities compared with other races. Strongly disagree. Here's the thing. Race does not matter. It does not matter for anything. Every single race is capable of succeeding and putting in the effort to succeed. Like, for those of you who don't know, I have very conservative belief regarding certain things, and I believe that black people or white people or Asian people are all very capable of choosing a path better instead of choosing dependency and handouts. Like, that's just where I stand. That everybody is capable of choosing better, and there's no one more superior than any other race. The enemy of my enemy is my friend. I strongly disagree, and here's the reason why. I'm going to do a moment of spoilers if you haven't seen Star Trek Voyager. The enemy of the Borg is called Species 8492. They're not friends. Species 8492 nearly was like literally planning an invasion of a distant galaxy. So, I strongly disagree. The enemy of your enemy does not necessarily mean friends. Military action that defies international laws sometimes justified. Now, this is a little bit more nuanced, especially in light of the actions taken recently by the United States government. Like, I would say yes, I agree with it. I wish it was like somewhat agree versus strongly agree rather than just agree, because there are some times where it does make sense, but sometimes where it does not make sense. Right now, there's a worrying fusion of information and entertainment. Strongly disagree. Who says that getting information has to stop? People are ultimately divided more by class than by nationality. I will honestly say yes. There are people who are more well off who do not know what it is like for us to be poor. Their fancy, expensive purchases is literally to mock the poor lifestyle. If you need to see proof, go check out what's her channel? It's like Reformed Hippie or something like that, and she does a lot of like, this is what rich people buy, and it's like painted shirt for $10,000. It's just a painted shirt. Okay, so I actually strongly agree about that. Controlling inflation is more important than controlling unemployment. I would disagree because we need to make sure people are working. We are all part of this nation and we are all supposed to have a part to play. Whether we like it or not, there is a small part that we do play. And if you're not doing your part, if you're just choosing not to contribute in some manner, whether it be being a housewife or a working wife, for example, in my case, because I am a married woman, you need to be contributing somehow. And if you're not, you're not doing anything to make your country better. You're enabling the bad things happening because you're not raising the next generation to do better. And I got another ad. Uh, and thank you for those hearts. Because corporations cannot be trusted to voluntarily protect the environment, they require regulation. I actually do agree, because there are a bunch of corporations who are so greedy that they cannot see past their greed. Like, even not talking about environment, but in other aspects too. That's kind of like the mega corporations definitely do that. And that's not saying there aren't corporations that don't, or like there are corporations that do care about the environment, and those are amazing. Let's just we need things to be a little bit more okay. The world's not just about you, company, okay? From each according to his ability to each according to his need is a fundamentally good idea. I actually do agree with that. Like, for when I read that, I'm thinking people, like, what they, unless they can't for some reason, like that they physically cannot, they are, people are fully capable of choosing a better life for themselves. They could make that choice and be better. The freer the market, the freer the people. I actually do agree. There should be some regulations to prevent like mishaps and abuse within the financial market, but other than that, it shouldn't be micromanaging every little thing. By micromanaging every little thing, is harming the local economics and the like it's harder for smaller businesses to thrive and succeed. As someone who is a small business owner, it's a sad reflection on our society that something as basic as drinking water is now a bottled, branded consumer product. I actually, I disagree because, like, where I'm from, to get a 24 pack of water is $3. And while yeah, water should be free, there's places where it is free, but it's a lot harder to get. It's a lot harder to have access to it. Whereas I would gladly spend $3 for convenience, if that makes sense. So I would disagree. I don't strongly disagree. I just a little disagree. Land shouldn't be a commodity to be bought and sold. I wish I could say neutral. Like I'm in the middle on that. Because land, at the end of the day, is just the place that we're temporarily living on. We're not going to be here for the next 20 million years. I mean, maybe our bones will be. But as a Christian, I firmly believe that I'll be going to a permanent, better home. So why should we fight over land? Why can't land just be land? But then there's also a matter of if you have your own land, other people can't really, or at least they shouldn't be able to tell you what to do with it. So I wish I was in the middle. I'm gonna go with disagree simply because now it makes more sense for you to, where everything costs money in this environment. It's like it's hard to explain. I don't know. There should be a neutral option on this political compass. That's kind of where I'm at with that. It's regrettable that so many personal fortunes are made by people who simply manipulate money and contribute nothing to their society. Here's the thing. A lot of things that people say that with, they take the things that those companies have done for granted. For example, Apple is a mega corporation. It's a personal fortune made by someone who manipulates money, but they contributed to society because I'm literally using an iPhone. That's what I'm using. That's something that I don't want to give up. So I would disagree with that because I don't regret having a phone. Okay? Protectionism is sometimes necessary in trade. Actually, don't know if it's just like you're overprotective or I have to open up a new tab. Sorry about that. Okay, protectionism is an economic policy designed to shield domestic industries from foreign competition. I would say yes. The thing is, most people need to realize that the more at home things we can make, the more jobs there are. There, there was actually something recently where when they started importing stuff from other countries, a lot of industry jobs just stopped existing because they were importing stuff from other places. And that takes away jobs. So I do think having more at-home like things being made and stuff is important. It is the only social responsibility. The only social responsibility of a company should be to deliver a profit to shareholders. Strongly disagree. See, I heard this recently, and I think it was actually from Call Me Chris, where it's like While employees are replaceable, so are companies. There's a complete cycle here. When you have a pyramid, only small people at the top, this applies with everything, only small people at the top controlling everything, the pyramid is no longer functioning from people first. It's functioning from the top first, which means the pyramid is tipped upside down and it's all wobbly and unstable. So I strongly disagree. The sole responsibility of a company is finances. The rich are too highly taxed. This is a bit nuanced. I feel like once you get to a certain point, that is not true. But like, it should be adjusted with inflation. Because, for example, the rich 10 years ago looks a lot different from the rich now. And I don't know enough about like taxation and amendments to it, but I'm gonna go with agree, considering how there's for people who are rich, but they're not like well off rich. Like I'm talking those who like I don't know make 80,000 in a year. That to me that's rich. But that if they're getting taxed and they're only getting 60,000, then they're going to be living very similar to how I am. So that's kind of where I stand. Like it should be exponential, but it should be a very gradual like curvature until it gets super duper high. So I'm going with agree, not strongly agree, just agree for the rich are too highly taxed. Those with the ability to pay should have access to higher standards of medical care. Now this is regarding like free, like free medical stuff. If you were to look at say Canada, there's more often than not long wait times and a lot of delays and more fast-paced stuff. I do think that on the medical front, things should be significantly decreased from what they are, but I don't think it should be free medicine, if that makes sense, like free hospitals and stuff. So I'm gonna go with agree, because like if you get someone who is and has associate's degree in medicine, they're gonna probably charge cheaper because they have associate's degree. It's not fair for someone who has their master's to be getting paid the same as someone with the associates, if that makes sense. Or like their doctorate. That's kind of where I stand. I agree on that. I think everything should be a little bit more balanced, but it's also it would be completely undermining economics wise if the doctors were getting paid the same as those with associates. Government should penalize businesses that mislead the public. I actually do agree. There needs to be honesty, much more honesty. A genuine free market requires restrictions on the ability of predator multinationals to create monopolies. I also agree. Now we're looking at my personal social values. Abortion, when the woman's life is not threatened, should always be illegal. I actually strongly agree with that. Because everybody's always saying her body, her choice, but life starts at conception. And if you say that you're not looking at all basic science knowledge. And here's the thing. Now this is a little bit personal, and I might start crying with this, but I had a miscarriage. I was only 5 weeks along, and when I saw the miscarriage happen, I saw my baby. That was not just random little. It was my baby. I actually saw a shape. So yeah, it's life, and that should never be taken unless someone else's life is threatened. So yeah, that is a very sensitive topic to some. Just like And those who say, well, what about if the baby's going to have a hard life because family is too poor? Foster care is a thing. Adoption is a thing. There needs to be reforms in that. But my parents were foster parents, and for the type of needs that foster kids have, they did a really good job as far as I could tell. The circumstances should never be what determines whether or not someone lives or dies. Like, that's the whole thing. I've talked about it on my channel before, so I'm not going to go rehash it all. All authority should be questioned. I strongly agree. Even in the Bible, it says to do it. It's better to ask questions than to blindly follow. An eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. I disagree. Just because someone else does bad does not mean you get to do bad. They are not responsible for your emotion regulation and your actions. You are responsible for that. Taxpayers should not be expected to prop up any theaters or museums that cannot survive on a commercial basis. I actually do agree with that. We need to cut budgets. We need to make sure that everything gets too limited. Schools should not make classroom attendance compulsory. I should not make one. So agree would mean that attendance is not mandatory. Disagree would mean that it is. I would disagree because they're actually seeing it now. The more that they're skipping out and they're not putting in the effort and they're being loosey with it, the more dumber they are. There are teachers out there who are complaining that their fifth graders are reading on a second grade level and they can't comprehend basic math. There needs to be attendance and there needs to be commitment to excellence. All people have their rights, but it is better for all of us that different sorts of people should keep to their own kind. I strongly disagree. You never know whenever someone of a different perspective might bring a different way of thinking that makes your perspective better. Like, we're seeing that online. The more isolated everybody is getting, the more they're like, oh, the other side are Nazis. The other side have no empathy. The other side are just completely hateful with no compassion. Like, we're seeing that online today. Like, it's less about the criticism of ideologies and more about putting people down. That's because there's no more conversation, there's no more interaction. It's just turn a blind eye and follow blindly to whatever you believe in. That's actually one of the things I was going to talk about at some point. I'm still trying to put together. It's called the cult of violence. And it's all about how our society is continuing on that path. Good parents sometimes have to spank their children. Strongly disagree. You don't need to be physical to teach a lesson, believe it or not. You see, I'm teaching a lesson right now, and I'm using comprehensible words in a comprehensible manner. And if words are not getting through, privileges can be taken away. Like, oh, you have to go stand in timeout. Oh, you don't get dessert. Oh, you don't get screen privileges. There are other ways to teach children that doesn't involve violence. Okay? It is natural for children to keep some secrets from their parents. I strongly agree with that. Parents, you don't need to be intrusive on your kids' lives. They are just as entitled to privacy as you are. Possessing marijuana for personal use should not be a criminal offense. I disagree. Because there are some benefits to weed, but it's so addicting that it's so harmful. It impacts so many things, and especially fertility. Fertility is a huge thing. There's a lot of stuff that goes into it. I don't strongly disagree because of the fact that there's some benefits to it, but for the most part, it's pretty harmful. The prime function of schooling should be to equip the future generation to find jobs. I agree. I don't strongly agree because there's a point with that where it's like you're just raising them to be slaves, where they don't think for themselves, and then they end up just following their orders, which is what we're seeing a lot of now, where they're just following the orders of the people on their side, of their political side, because they're just that's what's happening. There needs to also be not just equipping for the future, but also critical thinking to learn and to study, to not jump to conclusion to get all the facts. People with serious inheritable disabilities should not be allowed to reproduce. Strongly disagree. We don't support eugenics here. The most important thing for children to learn is to accept discipline. Depends on what discipline is. I'm going to go with agree. If discipline is corporeal, like punishment, no. But children need to understand that there are punishments, there are outcomes to their actions that are not good. And then when that doesn't happen, it goes into adulthood and creates much more dangerous things. Like, just for example, a 2-year-old doesn't get their candy because they were being moody. So they're throwing their toy truck. Okay, they don't accept discipline. Now, that 2-year-old would be a 30-year-old not getting his way, and he's throwing stuff and throwing a temper tantrum, which makes things very dangerous for those around the person, because it's no longer a 2-year-old who can't effectively harm someone. It's someone who can murder someone. So yes, I do agree that there should be learning to accept discipline. There are no savage and civilized people, only different cultures. I disagree. Here's the thing. If there's one culture that strictly teaches to be racist, to be hateful, that it's okay to hurt people of other cultures, I would consider like they're just constantly choosing violence instead of peacefully talking, then yeah, that's savage. It's dangerous. It's not civilized. Civilized means that you can handle yourself in a public and private situation that without being crazy, without yelling and screaming and killing and murdering. And yes, they are different cultures, and all cultures should be learned about and viewed with respect. But also, that doesn't mean that there's not civilized and not savage people. There's both. Those who are able to work and refuse the opportunity should not expect society's support. I strongly agree. I was talking about that earlier. You can't be expected to have life handed to you on a silver platter when you're not doing anything to contribute. When you are troubled, it is better not to think about it, but to keep busy with more cheerful things. I disagree. I don't strongly disagree, because sometimes in certain situations, it is better for you to focus on the more happy things, but then come back and work through the more troubling things. First generation immigrants can never be fully integrated within their new country. Strongly disagree. People can learn to assimilate. What's good for the most successful corporation is always ultimately for the good of us all. Strongly disagree. You see, let's say the big companies were all destroyed for whatever reason. That gives smaller companies a chance to grow and prosper and flourish, because there's a big gap and that still needs to be fulfilled. So it's like things are going to, like, there may be a small little bit of a hiccup, but things will circle back around and things will be okay. No broadcasting institution, however independent its content, should receive public funding. I agree. I don't think it should receive any funding. Like, other than, you know, there's definitely funding of sorts to keep going. But when they receive funding, it creates very heavy biases. So when the people who are funding them are funding for a certain viewpoint, that's just going to keep going. And now we're at a point where it's like it really doesn't matter because every single place does it. So, and how you see the wider society. Our civil liberties are being excessively curbed in the name of counterterrorism. I actually agree. We are seeing this within, like, just look at the UK. Heavy gun control, heavy hate speech control. And is it a good place? No, it's very bad. We need our civil liberties because at the end of the day, the criminals are going to get their guns no matter what. The only thing that those are going to affect are the law-abiding citizens. The significant advantage of a one-party state is that it avoids all the arguments that delay progress as a democratic political system. No, there's no advantage to a one-party state. You want to know what that's called? Dictatorship. Which I honestly believe with the whole open border policy and putting those immigrants just without vetting them and making sure that they are safe people, just putting them in swing states specifically was going to lead to a one-party nation within the United States. If you look at where they were putting them all, it was specifically in swing states or in states where there's been some more Republican support growing. And that's just what makes me sad. Because people don't put two and two together. Like they look at the whole immigration issue and they see it from one side. They don't look at the bigger picture. See, I think that immigration policies could be reformed. It definitely needs to. But if you're saying that you're for open immigration, whether or not you say yes or no to it, by supporting open immigration, you are saying I'm okay with allowing other nation rapists and murderers into this country. We already have enough of our own. We don't need more. Yeah, hi person who just came in to hear me talk about rape and murder. But yeah, that's kind of where it's at. It's like there needs to be more regulation and like adjustments to immigration policies. I can't stand for open immigration though. Just if you were to look at conservative sites, they most definitely highlight all the injustices of the bad immigrants. And you'll be able to see example after 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 example of those people choosing to do bad, choosing to be violent and dangerous, and be rapists and molesters. Although the electronic age makes official surveillance easier, only wrongdoers need to be worried. I disagree. I feel like the government snooping into people's like devices is a little worrisome, regardless of who it is. The death penalty should be an option for the most serious crimes. So I'm going to go with agree simply because this is what goes through my head. If someone commits a crime, they should go to rehabilitation first to try to get things better. But if rehabilitation does not work, they are a threat to society. They should be then given about 10 years for them to reflect and see if that's the case. And then if that does not fix it, then we should focus on the safety of all people. And this is not just the victims, but also the person who harmed. Like rehabilitation, give them time to think if that's what they really want. And if they're not going to change, then they have to be removed. If that makes sense. Like try to make sure that they get better first to make sure that they won't hurt others. In a civilized society, one must always have people above to be obeyed and people below to be commanded. I actually agree with that. I don't strongly agree, but I do agree. There needs to be some form of commandment and some form of government to regulate things. Abstract art doesn't represent anything. Oh wait, abstract art that doesn't represent anything shouldn't be considered art at all. Strongly disagree. Art is art. You may not understand it, but art is art. And criminal justice, punishment should be more important than rehabilitation. Strongly disagree. That's exactly what I was trying to say regarding the death penalty. It's like a last option. Everything else has failed. Resort. It is a waste of time to try to rehabilitate some criminals. Disagree. Not strongly disagree. I just disagree. There are some who are just repeat offenders who will not change their ways because, they like doing what they do. But most criminals, if they were given the resources, probably would change, as far as I understand. But they had to go through rehabilitation and some time. The business person and the manufacturer are more important than the writer and the artist. Strongly disagree. We need both. They're equal. Mothers may have careers, but their first duty is to be homemakers. I agree, because homemaker is not strictly confined to being at home all the time. Like, being a homemaker means that you make sure that your children have a good home, that they're raised and they're taught how to be good. You can do that in work, and there are people out there who do that at work, and they do it on their own. And props to those people, mothers and fathers, who do that. Props to you guys, because that's no easy feat. But any parents should have the first priority be to be good homemakers. Almost all politicians promise economic growth, but we should heed the warnings of climate scientists that growth is detrimental to our efforts to curb global warming. What does money have to do with heat? I strongly disagree with that. I'm going to reread it out loud. Almost all politicians promise economic growth, but we should heed the warnings of climate science that growth is detrimental to our efforts to curb global warming. I guess it's like in terms of cars with carbon emissions, but here's the thing. History knows that there's multiple ice ages. Do you want to know what that means? The Earth got hot, so ice melted. There's been global warmings already, and the world did not die. Making peace with the establishment is an important aspect of maturity. I will go with agree. Like, I know that there are a lot of things that should be reformed within the government. But I also know that unless I were to choose a career that puts me in a position to do that, I'm not going to be able to make that change. Not unless I start at the basis of my family, my community, my city, and then it'll just grow. But everybody has become so polarized that it's impossible. It's impossible to have that conversation because everybody's so set in their ways. They see the things that they make them so mad that they won't really look at other perspectives. Like, they'll look at other perspectives, but they won't consider their points. They won't consider the values that they bring because what they've seen was so bad. So now, that's in all communities. You get all people who are like that, who are so closed-minded, but they think they're open-minded because they look at other perspectives, but they don't actually look. So to create the family, family change can work. Community change to eventually spread to the rest, that's not really going to happen. So you gotta kind of come to terms with it. Be like, hey, you can't change it, so why get so pissed off to the point of taking away at yourself and chewing up at yourself? Like, for those who like to say that Trump is a rapist, okay, what does that have to do with him being in office? What does that have to do with you? What does that have to do with me? How has him being a rapist impacted whether or not he's been a good president, whether or not he's led our country well? Can't say anything because there's no correlation. There really is not. And if there is, if I'm wrong, feel free to let me know. But, like, I don't see the correlation in whether or not someone was a rapist has anything to do with the policies that someone has done. Anyways, that was a big ramble. Next page. Hi, people. On page 5 of 6. Astrology accurately explains many things. I strongly disagree. Let me give an example. I'm going to look up. Uh, I'm going to look at my natal birth chart. I'm not going to share the information because it's quite revealing. Like it shows some stuff. Maybe when I'm eventually move away from here. So, so my sun is the Aquarius. The sun determines your ego, identity, and role in life. It's the core of who you are, and it's a sign that you're most likely to already know. Your sun is an Aquarius, meaning you are fundamentally unconventional and anti, comfortable dissenting or straying from the norm. Your intellectual talent of abstraction is oriented towards pushing the boundaries of what seems reasonable. I don't feel like I push the boundaries of what seems reasonable because I believe that sex is important in determining gender because like that's a lot of that's literally in the brain. Like, well, unless that's like not reasonable to you, then okay, I don't care. You carry a lot on your shoulders and have a need to fight for the underdog. It's in your fourth house, meaning you feel the need to distinguish yourself from others through your home and family. No, I just am myself. I just be weird, okay? The ascendant is the Libra. Your ascendant is the mask you present to people. It can be seen in your personal style and how you come off to people when you first meet. Some say it becomes less relevant as you get older. It changes every 2 hours, so if it doesn't make sense, reconfirm your birth sign to be sure. Your ascent is in Libra, meaning you come across as compromising, courteous, and fair-minded, although sometimes passive-aggressive. Okay, that's fair. You seem inclined towards balance in all form, aesthetic, romantic, and judgment. No, that's not true. That's not true. See, I'm a huge thing about romance. Like I seem inclined towards balance in all form, aesthetic, romance, and judgment. So I understand it basically means I like to look good. I also love romance and make sure to have good judgment. You guys know as well as I do that that's, I'm a huge romantic. Sometimes it impacts my judgment, and that's okay. My aesthetic is very much. I don't know. I'm literally wearing a freaking square cutout pimple patch that has pus in it. Ew. So that's the other thing. People look for the things that connect with them. They don't look for the things that disagree with them. My moon is in Gemini. The moon rules your emotion, moods, and feelings. It's a sign that you most think of yourself as, since it reflects your personality when you're alone or deeply comfortable. Meaning it, my emotion state is often restless and unsettled. You're extremely adaptable, but sometimes make you feel pulled in too many directions. You're easily bored, feel the need to, and need to feel like you are free to be creative and creating, which can make you feel like you're in a constant identity crisis. It's in your eighth house, meaning you find security and safety through darkness, taboos, rebirth, sex, and transformation. The only one of that is true is that I'm adaptable, which makes me feel like I'm pulled in too many directions. That's definitely true. The rest of it, like I also do feel the need to be creative. I'm not in an identity crisis. I don't find security and safety through things like darkness, taboos, rebirth, sex, or transformation. I find security in Jesus Christ. They want to know me. Okay, my Mercury is Capricorn. It's my third house. It's how I communicate, talk, think, and process information. And basically, my intellect is conservative, practical, serious, efficient. I'm sorry. Efficient and rational. Sometimes I'm those things. Sometimes I'm not. You have not seen me in my PMDD craziness. You tend to be a poor communicator. No, when I have an issue with somebody, I can communicate effectively. Okay? See, that's the thing. Most people look for what relates, they don't look at what disagrees. So when they see the things that relate, they think it's true. But I'm using this as an example to answer the political compass. There's one more that I got. There's a couple more that I got to do. My Venus is Pisces, which determines how and what you love. Meaning your romantic side is sentimental, dreamy, and gentle. You have an endlessly deep well of compassion and love, but you have trouble protecting yourself in relationships. No, I don't. I put boundaries down. I like that's not true. I mean, I am very much sentimental and dreamy when it comes to romance. My husband can testify. It's in your fifth house, meaning that for you, love is often expressed in romance, self-expression, creativity, and pleasure. I mean, is that not the case for most people? My Mars, my seventh house is Aries, which is aggression. It's how I assert myself, take action, and the energy that surrounds me, particularly in your sex life, your ambitiousness, and when you're angry. Okay, I know how I get when I'm angry. That's seen a little bit of it on here. I know how I get when I get angry. Your Mars is in Aries, meaning you assert yourself in a way that is to the point and impulsive. Yeah. You love to make things happen and you push things forward with energy and enthusiasm. Yeah. You have a short temper but are quick to forgive. Yeah. The bravest sign of the zodiac. It's in your seventh house, meaning you put a lot of energy into close relationships and long-term partnerships. That's the first one in all that list that actually was accurate. Well, I still got one, two, three, four, five more to go. My 11th house, my Jupiter, is Virgo. Sorry, my nose is like running a little bit. Give me 1 second. This is actually, I, I was kind of interested in learning more about this, but like, I had enough common sense to know that it was not going to agree with everything. And that it was doing a lot of generalized things. Anyways, one of the two social planets, Jupiter rules idealism, optimism, and expansion. It's also very philosophical. Your Jupiter is in Virgo, meaning you grow and find understanding through careful thought, yes, goal setting, yes, and hard work. No, I, sometimes it's not hard work. It's just doing the stuff if that makes sense. Like sometimes it's just doing the small stuff. It's in your 11th house, meaning you find success through social status. No, including platonic and casual friends. Yeah, along with your hopes, wishes, and dreams. Here's the thing: I grew up with not having good friends, so like I want to have good friends, but at the end of the day, I've kind of been in a state of mainly isolation for most of my life. My parents can testify to that, and that's okay. My Saturn, my ninth house is Cancer, which is the other social planet. Saturn rules responsibility, restrictions, limits, boundaries, fears, and self-discipline. And I struggle with my emotions. I have a taste for drama and an overabundance of empathy. Okay, so here's the thing. What does struggling with your emotions mean? Because if you're struggling with identifying emotions and coping through them, no, I don't struggle with that whatsoever. But I do have PMDD, which makes me very mood swingy, and that is a struggle. And having a taste for drama, no. Yes and no. I think everybody likes to hear about the little drama, but they don't want drama with them. Like they just want peace. My fifth house is Pisces. It stays in each sign for 7 years, meaning it rules a generation more than a person. It rules innovation, rebellion, and progress. And my Uranus is in Pisces, meaning other generations are shocked by your generation's sense of empathy, dreaminess, and gentle nature. Um, I would say they're shocked, but I don't think they're calling it like they're like, yeah, this to that point, but for the most part, is harmful. This manifests in rebelling against dated expectations about romance, self-expression, creativity, and pleasure. Here's the thing: I actually do like the old-fashioned expectations regarding romance. Like the guy goes out and does a bunch of stuff for the girl, and makes sure he's treating the girl right. Is self-expression? I think the old-fashioned was that like it was limited, and I guess that makes sense. I don't care. Express yourself however you want. Creativity and pleasure. I don't care about that, if that makes sense. My Neptune, my fourth house is Aquarius. This Neptune stays in each sign for around 14 years, meaning it rules a generation more than a person. My entire generation finds inspiration through the task analysis and intellectual pursuits. I have actually yet to meet more people who are seeking more smarts than those who are just following the crowd. So I disagree with that a lot. Is in your fourth house, meaning that for you this manifests in your ideal, ver- verging on unrealistic and impractical about the home and family. Now, my last one, my second house is Pluto, Sagittarius. I'm so tired. I'm so sorry. Probably mispronounced that. I'm just really tired and out of it. Pluto stays being sad for up to 30 years. It rules power, intensity, obsession, and control. Like the generation of Psyche is comparatively positive, free-spirited, curious, optimistic, forward-looking, independent, and confident. Yes. It's in your second house, meaning you personally are transforming outdated relationships to money, material possessions, and security. No. So, the whole point of me doing math was to show that regarding me personally, astrology accurately does not accurately explain things. There were a lot of things that yes were true, but also yes were false. You cannot be moral without being religious. I actually disagree with that. I don't strongly disagree because at the end of the day, like there's a whole argument on what makes something moral, and at the end of the day, it does come from God. But people can still. There's a literal Bible verse that says they will know me even if they don't know me. Or it says something very similar to that. People will act with morals even if they don't see it from God, even if they don't act religiously. So I disagree with the whole you cannot be moral without being religious. Charity is often better than social security as a means of helping the genuinely disadvantaged. I disagree. There should be like a bit more security. Charity is very dependent on the economics of the time, and seeing as how economics can become very unstable, it is not wise for that to be the case. Some people are naturally unlucky. I disagree. I've had a crap ton of nosebleeds lately, and I've gotten my husband's curse of nosebleeds. It is important that my child's school instills religious values. I do agree with that. I don't believe religion should be the deciding point of certain things, but I do believe, particularly when one is raised not with cherry picked scripture, it can raise them to be a very strong, intellectual, and self driven person. But they have to be someone who studies and who learns. And that's something that a lot of people cherry pick. Like there's a whole part where it's like, you need to learn. You need to be prepared to talk about these things and know your facts. So yes, that's why I'm also homeschooling. So I would hope so. Now we are on page 6. I've been doing this for over an hour. Woo! Finally, a look at sex. Sex outside marriage is usually immoral. I actually strongly agree. Like, here's the thing. I am a Christian. I do believe that sex outside of marriage is something that is often abused. It lacks the deep emotional connection that one would have within a marriage. Now, I've already had a discussion of what a biblical marriage is. To those who don't know, there's a lot of points in the Bible that goes to say that marriage may not be 100% confined by legal means. Because at the end of the day, God is more than the law. It's, you can have someone be married according to the law, but not be married with how they treat each other. So it's more important for people to be married with how they treat each other than what a piece of paper says. So with that, sex outside of that sort of like commitment to each other, it's very much, it makes your own body as a temple become as used as a convenience store, if that makes sense. But I also do think, and this is a part where a lot of people don't do, particularly within the church community, where they to say their own point of view, but then they also say you must do this, while completely forgetting that God gave us free will, and it is not our place to judge. I can talk about it all the day long, but at the end of the day, I'm never going to judge you for choosing something differently. Like, no matter what happens, all of our actions will have outcomes, and we will have to deal with those outcomes. And I can't be swooping in and playing God in your life when you are responsible for you. I'm not responsible for you, you are responsible for you. A same sex couple in a stable, loving relationship should not be excluded from the possibility of child adoption. I, uh, I don't know. Because, like, if this not a holy matrimony, like, it's not prohibited or it's not allowed in the Bible for same sex to be married to begin with. But at the end of the day, some people's brains may develop very similarly to the opposite sex, and they may emulate more of those characteristics. So, the other part is, like, there's a lot of examples out there where it's just they do, but then it's bad. There's a lot of examples out there of same sex do adopt, and it's good. So I have it as agree, not strongly agree, because they should not be excluded. But just like with or different sex, like yeah, a traditional marriage, everybody should be checked, and everybody should be in a good space. Porn depicting consenting adults should be legal for the adult population. I strongly disagree. There are studies that show it's just as harmful as drugs. What goes on in a private bedroom between consenting adults is no business of the state. I strongly agree. No one can feel naturally homosexual. Here's the thing. We're going to get into some theology, even though this is politics. We're getting into some theology here. Way back when, before the fall, things were perfect and things were natural in that sense. But when sin entered the world, a lot of that got distorted. A lot of things that may be unnatural in the eyes of God start to feel natural for certain humans. That's why we got people who are okay with cannibalism, or people who are okay with raping others, because in their eyes it's natural. It's how they feel. So I would say, and this is also something talked about, like this trading natural for unnatural, but it feels right for them. So I'm going to go with disagree strongly, because we all have things that are, according to scripture, sins that feel natural for us. For example, Dr. Pepper. I love my Dr. Pepper way too much. It's too much sugar. It is bad, and it is a sin of mine. But it feels natural for me to have it. So that's what I mean when I say that I disagree with the fact that no one can feel naturally homosexual. These days, openness about sex has gone too far. Yes, that's 100% true. There's a song that came out kind of recently where it's talking about how, like, women have become, it's like you're either 12 looking 20 and you're 20 looking 12. It's all about pornography these days. We have too many young kids who are very understanding of what sex is, and it ruins their development. Like, there's something where it's like it ruins their ruins their developmental processes if they're exposed to it too soon. And I agree with that. Kids do not need to be involved with sex whatsoever. Now let's see where you stand. Political compass. So, hi. So I finished taking the scale, and I finished taking the scale. Yes, I wrote this a scale. I'm kidding. That's what we're looking at for me. It's pretty close to the center, which is what I was expecting, because I have a lot of moderate views, even though a lot of it does stem from actually conservatism or conservative beliefs. Where do hardcore conservatives stand on the I'm trying to find a good way for people to see. So that's the one that I found that has the stuff. So I guess the whole thing is it's like I judge where I am politically based off of the morals and stuff. So if you guys enjoyed that, go ahead and subscribe. I post occasionally. Sometimes I don't post for a bit, but that's usually because I'm busy and I'm trying to relax. But yeah, feel free to comment, like, subscribe, whatever. And I am continuing to work on some songs and the political talk and the theological stuff. But also, I have a lot on my plate right now, so I'm just going whenever I feel like it. Have a good day, you guys.